Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Scott. How's it going?
Awesome, man. This is episode 4. We're recording late on this Tuesday evening. Got some awesome stuff to go over tonight, so I'm excited.
Me too.
Let's get right into it. Recap of last week's episode, where we really wanted to focus on the benefits of fasting, and talk about insulin, its importance, and why it's the key component to the fasting programs and what's made the biggest difference in our lives. I know that we asked you guys to go back and look at your wins and losses from the week and put in a couple of habits or things that you really wanted to focus on as you planned out your week and when you were going to be eating. So hopefully that went well. Hopefully there were more wins than losses. But regardless, if you have questions, you guys can always email us at info@thefastingforlife.com. Tommy, that's correct, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure.
Drop us some lines and tell us about your wins too.
Awesome. Yeah, good idea. Recap of what we're going to be going over today. We're going to be talking about the American Diabetes Association. We're going to be talking a little bit about Diabetes Australia and some of the guidelines and really their perspective on, and their take and their recommendations and everything that's included in these massive websites and organizations, and really how their outlook and guidelines differs from what the research says and also differs from what seems to work. So we're going to go into that. And at the end, we are going to ask y'all to join us on the challenge that we have been talking about since episode 1. And we have got a date set. So we'll give you the details for that before we finish up tonight. Sound good?
Yeah, stay tuned.
Awesome. So let's jump right in with the American Diabetes Association and Diabetes Australia. These are two of the oldest organizations in terms of diabetes. They've been around since 1937 for Diabetes Australia and 1939 for the American Diabetes Association. And when you start scrolling around the websites and looking at the resources that they have, there is a lot of good information on there, but there's also a couple things that are really left out. So, it's eye-opening when you look at it and you start thinking about, reversing it, meaning, insulin resistance, diabetes, blood sugar problems, versus just managing it. So that's what we're going to dive into.
Yeah. What did you see about reversing diabetes on either one of those websites, if anything?
So on Diabetes Australia, I saw a link to donate to research. Okay. And that was it.
Okay. Is that how you reverse it? Just make a donation?
I'm not sure. I did a search and it was actually not reversing. The term they used was cure. And it was a link to donate. And that was it, to answer your question.
Okay. And what about American Diabetes Association? Anything about reversing? Nope.
Just managing. So,
yeah, I got the same feeling. It seemed like they don't really talk about reversing. I'm not sure if they believe in it or they think that it's possible or it goes against what they are and they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot, maybe, not to be too conspiracy theorist, but I didn't see anything about it.
Right. And that's a good point. The way we decided to talk about this is because, if we're going to be providing information to people, then what's the information that's out there and where do most people go? especially if you've just been recently diagnosed. And not everyone we're talking to right now has diabetes. You and I don't, but we did have insulin resistance, and it was starting in our 30s and before, but it was starting to escalate already. In our mid 30s, where we're like, wait a minute, we've got the signs and symptoms already. So it's time to take care of this now rather than waiting. But these are the places that, have all of the resources that people are given when they are diagnosed. And there was no talk of reversing or curing. And the only time I saw the word fasting was on the Diabetes Australia site. And it was in regards to religious purposes. And the first thing it really said was, or to hit a weight goal, which is kind of not really the purpose of it. But it didn't give any, insight to it. And then in terms of low carb, what did you see?
Low carb, I basically saw a few recipes, a couple of them not being the best low carb recipes I've ever seen. Not what I'd really recommend to somebody if they ask me, hey, what's a good low carb recipe? Some added sugar here and there, and a focus on I saw a lot of focus on A1C, a lot of focus on blood sugar and control, and carbs. Carbs equals blood sugar is what I saw. So not a whole lot of good comprehensive information, honestly.
And good information for understanding what it is in terms of, because all they talk about, really all the resources show, is talking about carbohydrates, which is the cause, one of the main causes. All foods do cause insulin spikes. I want to be really clear about that. But processed foods, refined sugars, high carb foods where your diet is primarily carbohydrate driven, that is absolutely going to accelerate the problem much faster than if you were consuming less carbohydrates. But there was really no guide on how to do that. And it really just came back to the point of, here's our position statement for Diabetes Australia. We believe that there is short-term benefit to low carb, but that's about it. And we're not saying that, we don't believe that low carb or keto or carnivore or any of these diets really need to be the answer, but it's in the removal of the problem, which is the insulin stimulation or the insulin production itself. And there's just no talk of that, like you said. So
no, none.
It no wonder why it's not, it's not getting any better.
Yeah. They just seem to have resolved themselves to, this is a condition that needs to be managed. It's going to be a downward spiral, but hopefully we can slow it down. These are the numbers. These are the key markers that you're going to want to see. Again, a lot of talk about A1C, where the levels should be, where they likely are, and then how to kind of control those, but mostly through insulin and potentially slowing it down with low carb, but that's about it.
Right.
Nothing better than that.
And if you get to the point of having to use insulin, my dad came to visit recently, probably mentioned on one of the previous episodes, and you could tell he put on weight. And I said, what's changed? He goes, well, I went on insulin 8 months ago. He's like, I just can't seem to get rid of the weight. And I'm like, well, okay, now we're at the point where we really need to talk because you're just speeding up that process, and you're speeding up the problem, where the only way to correct it is to remove the insulin. And that doesn't mean stop taking the insulin, but it means putting a plan in place to say, okay, this is how we're going to get your insulin resistance improved, and this is how we're going to get your insulin decreased, and this is how we're going to get your insulin sensitivity, which is the effectiveness of the insulin, to go back up and to get you off all that stuff. So just a completely different mindset, and looking at the resources that are out there, and two of the biggest diabetes organizations there are, and not seeing any real verbiage or thought process on, like you mentioned, curing it, reversing it, or even preventing it. It's like this kind of, mythical creature where it's like, if you follow the standard American diet guidelines of the food pyramid, you're going to be ingesting lots of things that stimulate insulin. And over a lifetime with genetic predispositions and all of these different types of foods and the higher stress and the more stimulation we have and the less sleep and just the fast paced, lifestyle that a lot of people are succumb to this, nowadays in society, it's just not going to fix it. And that's the frustrating part, is that there's so much money out there, there's so much information, but it's not getting better.
Yeah, let me underline a point that you just mentioned for your dad too. So as soon as he gets put on insulin, that means that his trajectory is pointed towards getting that A1C down. That is the whole point of the insulin, because they're going to be looking at the A1C probably 2 or 3 times a year. They're going to take it. And for you guys who don't know A1C, it's generally accepted as a good 90-day moving average of your blood sugar over that period of time. And as it comes down, that's good. As it goes up, that's bad. It means you're hitting higher resting and eating blood glucose levels. But if that's what you're aiming at through insulin, the only way to keep driving it down further is to keep upping the insulin dose over time. And that's going to force fat storage. That's going to force a higher weight, more visceral fat, and it's going to compound the problem, even though the key metric that they're going to be looking at, the blood work, they're going to say, okay, it's looking good. The A1C is coming down a little bit, or at least it's not getting worse. And that's not the right target.
Right. And that was a conversation I had with a patient a couple of weeks ago, where she has been implementing fasting and losing a ton of weight and decreased her insulin by 90%, is off with her doctor's supervision, off metformin, but her A1C did go up a little bit. And she was, the doctor went into a conversation of, well, if you don't follow my recommendations, I'm going to have to release you as a patient. And, she got scared, about, he was using some terminology that isn't even possible in her situation. And not to get into the nitty-gritty details of it, but the bottom line is that her A1C number was better because of the insulin. So it's almost like she had the answers to the test going in to take it. She's like, okay, because the insulin's almost like cheating the system. Does that make sense? Where it's like, okay, you're using this sliding scale over the 90 days, but if you remove the insulin, then the number goes way up. If you increase the insulin, the number goes way down. So you're not really fixing the problem. You're just sliding and moving the goalposts. So I said to her, I said, listen, yes, short term, it did go up a little bit. Keep tracking your daily numbers. Are they continuing to go down? She said, yes. I said, then you're making progress. So none of that's out there. None of that thought process or that I can see from standard practice is that, it's not going to be moving you towards fixing the problem. It's just going to be either maintaining or slowly moving you towards the problem getting worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And that seems to be where most people are aiming, because, it's going to start with the large associations, government, dictations, then what people are being taught in school and what the practitioners are advising. So it's a problem at the foundation of it.
Yeah. And that's where fasting comes in. And that's why fasting is so powerful, because it is the easiest way to stop the problem. It's the easiest way to get the problem to reduce, to no longer put gasoline on the fire, but to actually get the fire to go out. However you want to put, whatever analogy you want to use, it's the fastest way. A lot of the information on the websites that you see will be, eat healthier, get a better lifestyle, lose the weight, and move more, right? So eat less, eat better, move more. There's a lot of that information on the website. The problem is that model has been disproven over and over and over again without people that are diabetics. Never mind people that are on medications that are furthering the problem. So not to just continually repeat the same, issue, the frustration level, obviously you can probably hear it in my voice, Tommy, is, I get a little fired up about this stuff because that's the path I was on. That's the path my dad is on. Well, not anymore. So really using fasting as the tool to set yourself up for success. And that's what we want to talk about as the next kind of action step is, how are you going to set yourself up for success in when you start the process of fasting, or if you already are fasting, how you can navigate it and make it easier, more enjoyable, and really know what to expect.
Right. And there are some key things that go into that. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about, because before your first fast, there's always some questions that come up. We had questions, everyone we talked to, they say, okay, what are you guys doing? Well, we're fasting. Okay, well, what does that mean? Don't you get really hungry? I get headaches. I could never do that. And, we hear the same concerns coming up all the time.
Right. And those are the same things that I said to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was like, excuse me? Like, yeah, I've done some IF before, intermittent fasting before, but you just want me to go from dinner to dinner? Okay.
Dinner to dinner is a great place to start.
Yeah.
24-hour fast, 1 meal a day.
It's simple. Like, talk about simple. You're like, oh, I eat dinner tonight? Okay. And I'm going to eat dinner tomorrow. As my stomach is growling because I'm in the middle of a 2.5. It'll end up probably being about a 2.5 day.
There you go.
But the hunger, which is the first point, people are like, oh, I get so hungry. It's not real.
No, we're conditioned to those different times. Most of us are pretty conditioned for 3, 4, 5 eating times in a day. Usually starts in the morning, maybe 8, 9 o'clock, something 12, 1 o'clock. Then again, maybe a snack later, or wait till dinner, probably 7, 8 o'clock. It's kind of pushing back further and further these days, and maybe something else before bed, and then do it all over again. So that might be the longest amount of time you get is 8 to 10 hours without eating in there.
And that's probably even kind of stretching it a little bit, in my opinion, just from seeing, the thousands of patients and consults over the years, is that people start the day with their coffee. They usually put stuff in their coffee.
Yeah.
And then they have something before they go out the door, and then they get to the office or wherever they're going, and there's snacks around, or somebody brings in donuts, and then there's lunch, and then there's the meetings. And then there's, when we used to do corporate wellness workshops, there was a bowl of candy on every conference table. And I'm like, what? So there's that additional stimulation. And then it's to grab something at the gas station before you have to commute home. Then you get home and have dinner, and then you have a snack before bed. So 8 to 10 hours, I think, would be, very generous for a lot of what could possibly be out there. But the point is that you don't ever really get a break, and your body doesn't ever get the opportunity to bottom out. So that hunger is not real. It's timing, it's habit. And then it's also stress. If you have a stressful situation come up, if you are bored, if you're looking for comfort, and a lot of the times it's as simple as hydration. So the rule is have some water, 15, 30 ounces of water. I typically drink water in 30-ounce increments because I have a bottle that's, about 30 ounces. Give it 15 minutes, and a lot of the times the hunger goes away.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, that's a great time to have a cup of coffee.
Yep.
I love a cup of black coffee. That will usually help. And figure out something important that you want to get done. Take that energy and that focus and put it on something useful. Because, generally speaking, within the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, like you said, you're not even going to remember that temporary stomach rumbling that you had.
Yep. And that's a huge point, is you said, when I started doing some of the longer fasts in the beginning with your guidance, you said, get some projects. Because it just helps to, put that energy towards something. It helps to distract you. And, the hunger pain does go away pretty quickly. The second thing would be the dawn phenomenon. So this is something that happens in the AM hours, 4 to 6 a.m. usually. Where you're going to, a lot of people will have breakfast and they're not even hungry, right?
Right. But as soon as you start eating, if you think you're going to have breakfast and you start eating, think how often are you hungry very quickly thereafter? Whereas if you ever just accidentally skip breakfast or you're in the habit of skipping breakfast, you'll know you're usually just not all that hungry. And
Yeah.
then by the time lunchtime comes around, like you're fine. But if you had a breakfast, then the insulin comes up, the blood sugar ends up coming down, and you feel it. You feel different in a couple hours. And the main thing that you're going to point to is, oh, well, I guess I'm hungry again.
Yeah. And your body is programmed to, it's pretty smart, fat storage and fat usage is, governed and run by a hormone called insulin, which we talk a lot about. And your body is smart. In the morning, to wake you up, your adrenaline goes up, your growth hormone goes up, your cortisol goes up. It's all based on that circadian rhythm to get you ready for the day. So breaking the fast. Yeah, exactly. Now, if you work third shift, different situation, but it's just, it's there as a guide, as doing what it naturally does. So by eating, by stimulating, you're setting yourself up for failure, because now you're like, okay, well, I'm starting my day going against what my body actually wants to do naturally.
Yeah, it's meant to fuel you up. You should have your highest levels of energy at that point, assuming you got a good night's rest. But
Right.
if you've ever felt that, been woken up and then deliberately gone back to bed, and then noticed when you woke up 30 minutes or an hour or two later and you were like exhausted, that's because you hit deep sleep again.
Yeah.
And you overrode that dawn phenomenon that was
Yeah.
supposed to be your body's way of telling you it's time to get up.
Yeah. And your blood sugar is normally a little higher in the morning too, because your body is going to be using that short-term energy storage to get your body up and get it ready for the day. So I know when I used to work late in school and all that, my system was pretty messed up. But now that I'm back on a really good routine, and not every night, I'm not hungry in the morning. And if you are really hungry in the morning, again, sleep, stress, a couple things to look at. But also, what did you eat the night before? What did you eat the day before?
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of carbohydrates? Because if you did, your body's going to be looking for that short-term energy source. So just, hunger, not real most of the time. The dawn phenomenon, it is something that we should work with, not against. That's why a lot of people have success with intermittent fasting, and they'll do a 16-8 window, meaning they will fast for 16 hours, eat for 8. And they typically will start eating at 10 a.m. or a lot of people do noon to 8 just to keep it simple. And
right.
that dawn phenomenon. Yeah, exactly. Lunch and dinner, super simple. We're talking about a, dinner to dinner situation. And that mid-afternoon time is typically when we'll see some people have some more concerns there.
Yeah, mid-afternoon, things tend to slow down. Energy might dip. That's a great time for a cup of coffee, some water, and just a little bit of refocusing. And just know, okay, well, a couple more hours and I'll be eating dinner. And usually after you've done it a few times, everything's fine. You don't even worry about it. But again, we're talking about especially before your first fast or as you're kind of getting into this process.
Right. And that 2 p.m. time has always been tough for me because that's usually the opposite of when insulin is at its highest. So it's usually when insulin is at its lowest. But typically, if you have a big lunch, then you are stimulating it again. You get foggy. You get that post-lunch drain where you just feel like sluggish. So for me, when I started doing the dinner to dinner fast or the 24-hour 1 meal a day fast, I noticed that was a time where I would get like tired. But then if I increased my water, and I was using trace minerals for the first week or two, I put them in my water, chugged the water. 15 minutes later, I felt great, like almost euphoric after a while. I was like, man, I feel like I just woke up again. Like you could just feel the body switch that quickly.
Yeah.
So that time period was tough for me, just speaking from experience when I first started.
Yeah, that euphoric feeling is interesting. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we talk about longer fasts and making the switch from the glucose heavy pathways over to the ketogenic pathways. And as we kind of switch the metabolism, we feel some of that euphoria, which is pretty cool. And usually we feel a spike in energy at that point too. So.
Right. So when you're coming off the fast, a couple of things we want to talk about here. when you are getting ready to set your eating window of 1 hour or 2 hours in the beginning, I personally would do a 2 hour window where I would have a little, almost like ease into eating. I didn't do that in the beginning. The first time you told me not to do what I ended up doing. And what I ended up doing was having 2 5-ounce grass-fed cheeseburgers with raw cheese in lettuce wraps. I had a cup of brown jasmine rice. I had a bunch of veggies. We had some almond flour cracker and cheese with some nitrate-free pepperoni appetizers. What else did I eat that night?
I don't know. That sounds like a lot already, though.
No, hold on. I'm not done. I had a couple of protein bars that I used to always eat. The Kirkland Costco brand protein bars. So I had like a chocolate one, I think. I had a cookies and cream because those were my 2 favorite. I had some popcorn, some Skinny Pop popcorn. This was all in 2 hours.
Against my recommendation. Again.
Yeah, I know you're saying it. I know we got that on the record.
Making sure.
So that's not what you want to do. So Tommy, tell them what they should do, because I learned my lesson the hard way and I felt awful.
Yeah, I did the same thing after a 7-day fast. I came off it without giving it a whole lot of thought. But it's a very quickly self-correcting problem. So if you do it once or twice, you probably won't continue to do it because it's uncomfortable. It doesn't take too long to feel that distension when you put in some serious food volume after you've been fasting, especially on the longer fast. So definitely recommend breaking a fast, especially when you're first starting out. Just be conscious of it. A handful of nuts, something else, like that can be good. A little bit of fruit. Give it a little bit of time. Don't just necessarily jump right into a meal, especially not a big one.
Right.
And this goes even more so the longer the fast was. So.
Correct. And we'll talk about that when we get into extended fasts. Now I'll come off a 5 or a 7 day, which I've only done a handful of. But when I do that, even like a 3 day, I'll have a couple of small handfuls of something or a few bites of something, or even just some kombucha, before we actually have a smaller meal. And it's just, you just feel a lot better. You figure it out. And, that's part of the mastery of this, is when you start figuring out what works best for you. And you figure it out pretty quick too. You do.
Yep, it's nice. It's nice to hear from somebody who's done it.
Right.
Because it's one less thing to kind of fear or worry about or think of as a potential hurdle, and something that can kind of slow you down, which is what we're trying to do. Trying to accelerate it for you guys, lessen the learning curve for you, because we've already been through it. You don't have to wait or worry like we did in the beginning, which is exactly why we're going to go into the challenge that we've been talking about. And so we're ready to finally give you guys a date. Scott, what's a date?
Oh, you're going to ask me? Okay. I gotta look at my notes. No, I'm just kidding. It is the day after Valentine's Day. It's February 15th, 2020. We are going to be starting the 7-day 2020 Vision Challenge, and it's going to be a fasting challenge where we lay everything out for you. We're going to make this super simple, super easy, and we're going to accelerate that learning curve, like Tommy said.
Sounds awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm, I've kind of been following, my 1 meal a day, 36-hour, maintaining the weight loss, still around 40, 42, 43, 45, 38, around that 40-pound weight loss mark. Been maintaining it for going on 8-9 months now, and it's been working. But I'm really excited about the 7-day challenge. There's going to be, a closed Facebook group. There's going to be a lot of resources, and we're just going to lay everything out for you. We're going to do some live teaching, some videos, emails. It's going to be awesome. So super excited.
Awesome. So we have 2 things for you guys to focus on this week. The first one, we talked a lot about starting your first fast, getting into it. What do you need to do? Well, that's why we developed the Fast Start Guide. So head on over to the website, thefastingforlife.com, download the Fast Start Guide. It will help answer those questions that we all have getting started. And so it's a great place to start. So head on over there, thefastingforlife.com, get the Fast Start Guide. And the next thing to do is make a commitment to yourself. Commit to the challenge. If you're going to be part of it, make that mental leap. Get yourself prepared mentally for it so you can jump in. You want to see results in 2020. You want to expand what you know and is possible for yourself. See the best version of yourself. Then join us. Join us on the challenge.
February 15th. And one of the reasons I'm glad we picked this date is because at this point, 97% of y'all that, started out of the gates hot for 2020 with New Year's resolutions, or call them whatever you want. I'm going to start going to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to start eating low carb, keto, paleo, Whole30, whatever it is that you decided to do. 97% of y'all by February 15th will have already fallen off the wagon. So we're going to be there to pick you up and give you something that is sustainable throughout the rest of the year. That's easy to maintain. And we are ready to rock and roll. Super excited, Tommy. Anything else before we close it up?
Yeah, absolutely. No, see you guys in the challenge. Get your Fast Start Guide.
Sounds good. Don't forget to subscribe to the Fasting for Life podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Head over to the website, and we will see y'all next week. See you, Tommy.
See ya. So you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start Guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.